This is my very first recording rig, actually. I must have bought it back in like 2012, maybe? I remember though, because I had like just started 8th grade, and prior to this, I had been recording pretty much everything through a USB to 1/4-inch cable. Yeah, dude, 2012 was weird. So I literally just plugged my guitar at the time straight into GarageBand. So we're gonna go through the history of pretty much every recording rig I've had, my whole history of gear, and then also what I did musically during that time. And at the very end, we'll compare basically the most expensive rig I can make out of the stuff I have now to the very first microphone and very first audio interface that I ever bought. So with that cable, that 1/4-inch cable to USB port, I made my first ever song back in middle school. I still remember it was me and my friend who happened to play bass. We walked back to my house through the woods and decided to just record a song after school. We recorded one bass loop and just looped that same measure. We weren't good enough to record more than a measure before we messed up. So we just looped it. And you can actually hear in the song the click right where we like improperly looped it, and the waveforms make a pop because they don't line up. Here it is, actually. I had just started learning what improvisation was on guitar, and I was having too much fun. So I just improv'd over the loop that we made. We made a chord progression out of open chords, and we found the worst drum loop in the history of mankind, and that was our song. Again, I couldn't do a whole chorus without messing up, so everything here is recorded one measure at a time and stitched together like a Frankenstein song. So here's what a $15 studio sounds like. Enjoy. Now fast forward a few months and I got these, kind of a PreSonus My First Producer's kit of sorts. Now this kit came with an audio box USB, it came with a PreSonus M7 microphone, and then some K240 knockoffs that are basically these plasticky open back headphones. And I probably rocked this setup for 4 years. I didn't even have anything besides what came in the box, like a mic stand. I didn't own one. I would pile a bunch of boxes up to the level of the speaker on my guitar amp, and then I would just lay the microphone horizontally on that pile and have it face the speaker. And I rocked this for a while. And it was during this era, probably around like freshman year of high school, that I learned my first production technique. And that was double tracking guitars. And I had a field day with this. I would record one take, flip the guitar to the opposite pickup, record another take, pin one of those to the left side, and then pin the other to the right side of the stereo image. And I thought it was absolutely mind-blowing. Shout out to Warren Hewitt for teaching me that. So here's the track that I made with that M7 and that audio box. 2 electric guitars and a stock drum loop that came with PreSonus Studio One. So senior year of high school, I finally got my first proper microphone. It was a Sennheiser E609, and I got it because the dude at Guitar Center said it was specifically meant for recording guitar. And it once again blew my mind. It sounded way better than that little M7 ever did, and I didn't have to deal with all the extraneous noise that you get from, you know, a pretty crappy condenser microphone. And from this point on, it was kinda Guitar-mageddon. The track I'm gonna show you is called Big Sky. I made it my senior year of high school, and you can kinda start to hear the audio engineer come out in me, not by mixing, just by recording. There was no mixing at all. In fact, I had just learned how to put in a reverb digitally on the computer rather than just recording my guitar pedal. And this was also the very first time that I understood the term plug-in. It's weird to say now. And at this juncture was the first time that I ever had studio monitors. It was a pair of JBL 305s in Arctic White. And honestly, it really shows in the mix. Here, check it out for yourself. I rocked this setup for many years after this, and my undergraduate degree is in architecture. So probably for the first year I was in college, I really didn't play music at all. This really bugged me a lot, and long story short, I decided if I couldn't play music, I would try and record other people playing music. So I got a job at Guitar Center, and I abused the hell out of that employee discount. One of the first things I did was buy a Rode NT1 to be the flagship microphone for my studio that I was running out of my dorm. That's the same Rode NT1 that you've seen on all of these different videos, and it is pretty banged up by this point. And I started inviting all of my coworkers from Guitar Center to record some of their singles, their EPs, their demos, all out of my dorm room, all still through that audio box USB, just now with a Rode NT1 and E609 if I needed it, and like some eggshell foam that I stapled to the wall because I thought that would help. So the track I'm about to show you is one of those tracks that I recorded out of my dorm room. This one actually has like 25,000 listens on Spotify now, which is really cool. I checked back in like 5 years later, and I guess it got on some playlist or something. Anyways, check it out.
Our whole lives we've been told enough. We're getting by when we're old enough. And all this time I wasn't close enough to feel that. Can you feel that?
So that track that you just listened to, I ended up forming a band with that guy and this really crazy good drummer that happened to go to the Guitar Center all the time. And if I was going to be recording all of us, well, I needed more gear. I ended up buying my very first Shure SM57. I still have it. It is the one that you've seen in all of these different videos. And any used gear that Guitar Center didn't want to buy, I would just take the dude out back and do some like shady drug deal basically and buy whatever Guitar Center didn't want. And I would buy it for like $5 because these people didn't care. I ended up with all kinds of horrible microphones. The worst shape SM57s, SM58s that you ever saw, or the cheapest off-brand Chinese microphones that you've never heard of. My dad happened to gift me my Scarlett 18i20 for my birthday. And Dad, if you're watching, you have no idea the mileage that interface got me. I was using it up until like a few months ago. He gave me an old copy of Pro Tools 12, that his work was just gonna throw away. So my first real DAW was Pro Tools, and that was the worst learning experience of my life. It's not intuitive. So I set up my folding table in my old apartment and I became my band's engineer. I recorded drums at my parents' house, and I recorded basically everything else from the corner of that basement, and that's where I really learned how to produce. So by this point, I had a Scarlett 18i20, I had those JBL monitors from before, and like a ragtag team of the shoddiest microphones you could ever think of, with the Rode NT1 being like the flagship mic. And here's what that rig sounded like. Here is an example of one of our band's songs.
I found you sitting in the hall, all strung out on Adderall, and you need to start thinking cause the cops are coming and everybody's running. You'll never get to college again, when your mama be calling you screaming.
we were better live. We toured around North Carolina for a while during the summers when no one was in school. We did a bunch of house shows, small underground shows, things like that. It was awesome, actually. It was really awesome. Here's some clips. So the band eventually broke up, and I dove fully into synthesizers, as any heartbroken post-band guitarist usually does. I learned about LFOs and filtering and envelopes. All these things kind of taught me more about production as a whole. So by this point, I'm decent enough at production to produce something that's vaguely professional, but really still kind of rocking all the same gear. Left alone, I really had no choice but to record myself playing music with myself. So I learned how to edit video, and here's an example of that. And peep those same headphones from the PreSonus audio kit. You can see them all over this track. So all of this eventually somehow got me into music grad school. I had done some other audio installations and some other cool technical projects that are not part of this video that probably helped. But yeah, I started studying music technology at Berkeley, Valencia in Spain. And here I got access to all sorts of different gear, both from my peers and from the school itself. And I really started to put that gear to work, and one of those ways was making videos. Pretty much all those microphones in the beginning of the channel, besides the NT1, the 609, and the SM57, were not mine. Now, I was never really very motivated to be part of that whole self-promotion cycle that musicians put themselves through. You've probably seen it before, like the story post, which is reposted by another person, which the repost is then reposted, and it starts to look like a perspective on a hallway or something. I honestly found a lot more fulfillment just kind of quietly making videos. So I started this YouTube channel in secret, actually. Dude, making a YouTube channel when you first start out, it is so embarrassing. It is so embarrassing. So in my grad program, everyone had a professor in charge of helping them with their thesis. And I eventually worked up the nerve to ask my professor if I could do a YouTube channel as my thesis. And she said yes, actually. So I got to do what I was already doing, but I was just doing it for school now. So the channel was born, and by the time I left Berkeley, I already had like a little small following. You know, eventually that snowballed, and then companies started sending gear for reviews, and here I am now with enough gear to fill an entire music studio, most of the gear well beyond my own caliber or skill set. So you are either right at the start of this journey, somewhere in the middle, or way beyond me. I guess what I'm trying to say is there is history and levels to this shit. It takes time to cut your teeth. It takes time to even be able to afford any of this. It takes time to grow and blossom to the point where any of this is even necessary, yet alone attainable. So beyond just telling you part of my own personal journey kind of through the lens of gear, I hope you can look at my journey and kind of pin where you are on this timeline. Maybe you're right here and you want to get to right here, or maybe you want to sidestep this entire journey. Music will persevere and be born no matter where you are on this step of the process. Really good music that you might not enjoy at the moment, but you'll look back on fondly. So let's take this back, shall we? Let's take it way far back. My humble AudioBox USB and PreSonus M7 versus everything that 15 years can throw at it. We'll do the Loudon Clarion, the Audient ID24, mixed on Ableton using professional and paid for plugins, and monitored through KRK Rockets and the Yamaha HS8s, all referenced on a pair of Hi-Fi Man Sundaras. Let's see what 15 years of gear sounds like.
We're just going to say it's fitting to have a mistake on the very last part of the beginner setup.
So work with what you got, I guess. That's the lesson I'm trying to convey here. See you next time.